Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange!
Ecuador, in order to get an IMF loan, sold Australian citizen Julian Assange for money. In order to get a loan, they sold an Australian citizen for money. This is an outrage. There is one, I'd like to say just briefly, that WikiLeaks has the grand narrative of every heinous crime of the late 20th century. These people are fiends. You can see Mrs. Hillary Clinton giggling as Muammar Gaddafi is sodomized by a bayonet. They're fiends. And as a consequence of WikiLeaks revealing these crimes, the destruction of Iraq, the destruction of Afghanistan, the destruction of Syria, the destruction of Libya, millions killed, they want their vindictive revenge. A part of this resentment against Julian revealing these crimes is manifested by the English magistrate judiciary, one after the other, Snow, Arbuthnot, and the latest Helen, making quite bizarre statements like Julian is a narcissist. But Julian has been in this court for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, and they declare this. Anyway, that's most of what I wanted to say. But Australia, we work together to bring Julian home to his family, to his children, and to give the Australian government the courage to stop assisting this by doing nothing.
Now, the Socialist Equality Party is raising the defence of Julian Assange as a central issue in the federal election, because this is a decisive political fight for the working class. Now, Julian Assange is being persecuted by the most powerful governments in the world for revealing, as a journalist and publisher, their war crimes, their mass surveillance operations, and their illegal diplomatic intrigues. Wednesday's ruling that he will be subjected to 50 weeks imprisonment on trumped-up British bail charges is a legal travesty. It's a warning that what's being prepared is not an extradition, it's an extraordinary rendition operation with a pseudo-judicial fig leaf. Now, a US persecution of Assange would set a precedent for nothing less than the abolition of freedom of the press. It's aimed at sending a very clear message to the working class that if you take action, social or political, that challenges the powers that be, you'll be met with state repression. Now, the attacks on Assange have only been able to proceed as a result of the complicity of successive Australian governments, beginning with the Greens-backed Labor government of Julia Gillard. Every Australian government has participated in the US-led vendetta against Assange. They've refused to defend a persecuted journalist and Australian citizen. Now Labor and the Liberal Nationals are offering unspecified consular assistance, but they're doing nothing to secure Assange's release or to prevent extradition. Now, it's not just the major parties. None of the other parties or the unions are doing anything to defend Assange in this election. They're trying to bury this issue in the campaign. And it must be asked, where is the MEAA, the media union? They're nowhere to be seen here. Now, by their active support for the attacks against Assange or their silent complicity, the parliamentary parties are signalling that they're pro-imperialist organisations committed to US wars and to the repression of those who expose them. The Australian media has likewise played an absolutely shameful role. But there is another social force which does defend democratic rights, and that's the international working class. Workers everywhere are entering into major social and political struggles against austerity, war, and authoritarianism. Assange is rightly viewed by millions of workers and young people in this country and around the world as a hero. Now, it's our task to forge these sentiments into a mass political movement that will force the Australian government to use all of its legal discretion and diplomatic powers to secure Assange's release, his return to Australia with a guarantee against extradition to the United States.
In a few weeks, we will have a new government, and our new government needs to find the courage to protect whistleblowers, to protect journalists and publishers. Our new government must not stand back and allow the United Kingdom to extradite an Australian journalist and publisher to the United States. I'd like to read you something written by the head of the Bar Association in Sweden, Anne Ramberg. Ramberg writes, "This is about much more. It's about freedom of speech and the rule of law. It is ultimately about the right and the moral obligation to expose crimes. Assange and WikiLeaks did it." To my colleagues in the mainstream media, I urge you, don't be distracted by inconsequential issues like perceived personality. That is meant to detract from the very fundamental and important issues at stake here. This is about truth and those who would ensure that secrecy prevails. And that goes to the very heart of journalism and of democracy.
In 2017, Pompeo not only pledged that the CIA would take down WikiLeaks, but that it would pursue with great vigour other small media platforms in WikiLeaks' wake.
Shame!
In other words, wage war on independent media. This is the same CIA that tortured people in secret, sadistic black sites around the world, jailed the whistleblower, paid the torturers $81 million, and promoted torture boss Gina Haspel to CIA head. It is the same CIA that lies as a matter of routine, with entire training courses on the subject, according to Mike Pompeo. If we allow Julian Assange to be extradited to the United States, these are the forces that will decide who is free to speak all around the world and who is not. It is not just a war on WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, although that is bad enough. It is not just a war on free press and free speech, although that is bad enough. It is tyranny.
The Australian government acted in the Hicks case after there was considerable community pressure. Many of you will remember that, because of the appalling treatment of Hicks. Julian Assange is in that category. His case is different in terms of background, but the end result is the same. He would be taken to the United States in the same way that Hicks was taken to the United States, and he'd be subjected to torture and what we call cruel and unusual punishment. The Australian government had an obligation to bring Hicks back to Australia. It's got an obligation to bring Julian Assange back to Australia. Whoever wins government on May the 18th, whether it be Morrison or Shorten, this matter will not go away.
Authorised by James Kurgan for the Socialist Equality Party, Suite 906, 185 Elizabeth Street, Sydney, New South Wales 2000.